Welcome back to the second half of TikTok The Stage. We've had some food, we've had some entertainment, so let's get into our next session. We're very excited to welcome Ken Hughes, one of the world's leading authorities on consumer and shopping behavior. Ken blends his understanding of consumer and cyber psychology, digital anthropology, and retail futurology to explore the needs of the new consumer and predict changes to come. In today's session, Ken will speak about rapidly evolving consumer values and what this means for brand communications.
Hi, my name is Ken Hughes. Thank you so much for that wonderful and kind introduction. I'm honored to be here with my friends at TikTok and all of you watching all over the world. I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to dive straight into the content. I've called the keynote today Collaborative Engagement. As a behaviouralist, I am fascinated, of course, by the models and the values by which consumers relate to brands, and collaboration is one of the key words that you need to keep in mind to be able to succeed in brand and business in the next 5 years. Also, connection is really what we're all yearning post-pandemic, of course. Consumers all over the world are looking to connect. They're looking to connect with themselves, with each other, with friends, with families, and also with brands and businesses in new and modern ways. You will only stay relevant if you understand how to connect with your consumer. And on connection, I want to introduce you to this lady. This is a lady called Brené Brown. She is a relationship expert. And she has a wonderful quote about connection, and she defines connection in person-to-person relationships as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. Those three things: seen, heard, and valued. You need to ask yourself the question, the marketing communications that you put out there to the world, do they make your customer feel seen, heard, and valued? Because that's the game today. Look at this image. This is your brand, your business there at the end of the plank. And all the other people at the end are your consumers, your shoppers. They keep you in business. You can clearly see what's going to happen if one by one they step off that plank to meet their needs in a different way. You can see how your business is going to go. That is how important making those people feel seen, heard, and relevant is. Now, the days of marketing communication, this model, the loudspeaker model, us shouting at our consumers on billboards and modern media, and it was a one-directional conversation. And we're very much past that now into what we call a conversational economy. You have to be having conversations with your consumers. If you're not, if you're still in that old way of thinking of that megaphone model, again, you're simply not relevant and that plank starts to tip. So really the conversation today is about how we've emerged from the pandemic with maybe the same values, slightly accelerated, but also new consumer values, which is what I want to take you through today. So let's start with one very simple one, the demand for instant, the demand for now. This already, of course, was a very heartbeat value before the pandemic, but certainly afterwards it has accelerated. Lots of examples. We could go all over the world. Let's go to Washington, D.C. Look at this one, the Bud Light one-tap beer delivery app. You press the phone once and within 20 minutes, 36 bottles of chilled Bud Light arrive at your door. Of course, here we have Bingo Box in China. This idea of anything you want, you can have it now. This demand for instant, this has already been embedded in our society, deeply in our society. And so understanding that the consumer wants it now. Here's another example from Booster. Again, why would you wait at a forecourt? Why would you have to go somewhere to fill up your car with fuel? Why don't you just park it at your own place of work and let the fuel truck come to you, pull the gas flap, go to work, and then later on when you go home, your gas tank will already be full. This idea of the product coming to you, you staying where you are, instant, one click, one swipe. This is the world we all occupy already. And of course, in the pandemic, we saw that very much accelerated, where we had to stay where we were and everything came to us. Now, culturally, that has caused a shift in consumer values in terms of putting themselves at the center and everything else revolving around them. And so we need to keep this in mind. Well, how do we then communicate with these consumers by putting them at the center, by making them feel seen, heard, and valued? And that's why my opening remarks are so important. The next value I want to talk about is community. Now, community and understanding peer-to-peer networks, which we will talk about in a moment, is really, really important. Humans, of course, are a tribal people. We like to love, we like to belong, we like to be together. And as a tribal people, we now mirror those tribes in new ways, in family tribe, in work tribe, in maybe going to the bar with our friends, in the gym, on the soccer pitch, and the digital tribes. We all belong to digital tribes. And that sense of community, particularly in the pandemic, was very evident in the digital tribe piece. And if you look at TikTok is probably, to be fair, one of the strongest community-based social media in the world today. People belong, people have a very much a tribal belonging and a community feel. The wonderful thing about that is that this is a base human need. And if we can identify and drop our brand and business into that community belonging, we really accelerate that fit between consumer and brand. And so because people like to belong, people want that belonging, this became very evident in the growth of TikTok and social media during the pandemic. And you saw people turn to the platform to have that sense of belonging, to stimulate that sense of belonging for themselves. So the question is where to from here? Well, we have to accelerate that community feel. And you, as a brand or a business, needs to understand that this is a shortcut to getting that belonging. And as I said, we'll talk about peer-to-peer in a moment. Also, what you need to understand is the experiential need today that consumers have. We have to give them an experience, even in our marketing communications, even in our communications and conversations we're having with them between the brand and them. It has to be experiential if it's going to matter. We came from a place of materialism, the 80s and 90s. You are what you own. You look at my car, look at my house, look at my Nike swoosh, look at these things. This is who I am. We self-identified through possessions. Now, those days are finished because culturally we tend today to express ourselves through what we experience and what we share. These two things. What am I experiencing? What am I sharing? Experiential equity has replaced brand equity in terms of how we measure relevance as consumers. So ask yourself the question, if you go, let's say, to a gym, is this an experiential, shareable moment? Probably not. I know some people do take pictures of themselves at the gym, but most people don't. Whereas if you compare that to, let's say, a colour run or a mud run, these are things that people do simply for the picture, for the video. So they share it on TikTok, so they share it with their friends. So experiences become social currency when you share them. And this is what people want to do. They want to have experiences and share them. Look at this I love this. This is Zao, the Japanese restaurant where you catch your own fish before you eat the sushi. So the idea of why do people go here? Is it for the food? No, of course it's not for the food. It's not for the sushi. It's for the experience, the video, the picture you take, the story you have to tell. That is an experience. So we need to be able to translate our brand communications into experiential moments that consumers can then share within their peer network. And the reason this has become so important post-pandemic is because we are lacking in memories. If any of you go into your photo reels, you will notice that you haven't done much in the last year, have you? You haven't gone anywhere. You haven't done anything. And people are learning new memories. The way to bank a memory, of course, is to have an experience. And if you, as a brand or business, provide that experience channel to them, your brand or business gets banked in that memory. And that's the important thing to build brand loyalty. Of course, you can have negative brand experiences. Look at this from Shanghai, Disney, when they opened post-pandemic. If you look at that experientially, it's awful. Come to Disneyland. Enjoy the fun, the play, but stand in your little yellow box. Nope. That's an experiential fail in my book. So we have to look at platforms that will allow us to bring an experience to life. And to be fair again, TikTok have that. They have a platform that is so joyous and happy and emotively engaging that people have experiences on the platform that other social media haven't been able to have. So I think you need to have a look at what you're doing as a brand and business and say, well, how can we harness this experiential element here? And how can we really add layers of value to the brand or business communication experience via a platform like TikTok? Now, I really want to get into what I talked about today, what I called the keynote today, collaboration. It's written here. It's on the screen in front of you now. So collaboration, this value that's so, so important in terms of how we link in with our consumers as brands today. So historically, we used to look at things like a customer journey, and you're all familiar with this, no matter what brand or business you're in. You know your customer journey, the various touch points along the customer journey. And often in that process, we placed the consumer at the end point of the customer journey. They were kind of like an inconvenient stopping point where the product got consumed. I would challenge that hugely and say that today we don't need to look at people as consumers. We need to look at them as collaborators. This is the most important shift, I think, in marketing communications in the last 10 or 15 years. Seeing our consumer as a co-collaborator shifts everything. And it moves them from being a passive endpoint in a customer journey to an active part of sometimes product development, but certainly in terms of brand tribal following, we need them to be an active, and they are already active themselves. And if we're not active with them, again, we have that plank moment where we fail in relevance. And let me give you an example of maybe of one social media platform versus another. So let's take something like YouTube, which is historically much older. It is probably what I would say a passive social media tool. It's mostly just consumed. People upload stuff, but it's very much a consumption product. And you compare that to the amount of creativity and co-collaboration work on a platform like TikTok, and you can see the difference. In fact, TikTok itself, of course, has caused some of this collaboration value in Gen Z as a generation. They are a much more creative, collaborative generation, partly because of even their use of a platform like TikTok. If you look at the duet feature, the idea that you can take someone's content and add your own content, and so you're continuously building on the creativity. You're adding to something. So you're not just there consuming. You're actually being taught from a very young age that it is important to co-collaborate, to co-create. And of course, that instantly creates a value of relevance if you as a brand or business are excluded from that. Take something as simple as a music video. Let's say in the old-fashioned way, an artist would push out a music video on a platform like YouTube, and off it would go, just to be consumed. Whereas today, that same artist can push content out on TikTok, and it can be duetted. The audience can be part of the product. Can you see the shift here? If the audience feel like they're part of the product, if the audience feel like they're co-collaborating in the product, then of course things like brand loyalty and brand tribal following follow suit. And this is important. No matter what brand or business you are, you need to think about this. How can we co-collaborate on platforms like TikTok? How can we bring our brand to life in ways that make people emotively engaged, laugh, and interact? We have an ability for people to interact with their brands in a way that never has before. And that is what is causing the huge shift in collaboration all over the world. Collaboration has become one of the core values of this consumer generation. And as a brand or business, if you're not activating that collaboration in your everyday, then you are, of course, missing a huge trick. I also want to talk about the shift from transactional to relational, having a relationship with your customer. So the old model, again, was very transactional. Again, customer at the end, and each transaction was individual. Whereas today we recognize that if we want customer lifetime value, if we want our customer to be with us for a long time and tribally belong, we have to, of course, form a relationship with them. This is all about relationships. In fact, business success has always been all about relationships. Here's a brand ladder that I've adapted from a guy called Martin Newmer. I've added a few bits, but the very premise here is very simple. If all you do is satisfy your customer, which is level one there, meet their expectations, then we can't really expect a huge amount of tribal following or growth. Whereas if you start to come up a level to level two, if you delight your customer, if you give them more than they expect, then you make them smile, you make them laugh, you make them engaged emotionally, which is the trick to, having a tribal belonging. And eventually level four there is an empowered consumer. And an empowered consumer sells your product or service for you. They sell it within their peer network, they talk about it, they boast about it, and that's where we all, of course, want to get to. Let me give you an example of a delighted customer. I'm going to step outside the online world here into the physical world for a moment, because I want to, as a behaviouralist, I study humans. I want to show you a short video, nothing to do with TikTok, nothing to do with online or social media. I'm going to show you a video from South Africa, simply a grocery chain, who at Christmas, because it was a tough financial year, surprised some customers by paying for their groceries at the end of their transaction. I want you to watch simply the human body, the human mind, the human eyes, the laughter. Watch what happens when we delight a customer and go beyond their expectations. Look at the whites of their eyes. Have a look at this.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Well, thanks. Just tired.
Tired. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? I'm well, thank you. Have you done all your Christmas shopping already?
So you'll probably see me next week.
I'm from Pick n Pay, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for being shoppers at Pick n Pay.
Because you're a loyal shopper, I know that for a fact firsthand.
You are receiving your entire shop for free. Yes, I am. Ready?
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. We are paying for this whole shop. This whole shop.
Everything today is free of charge.
It is so free.
Yeah. With compliments, your entire shop is for free. Oh.
So I'm going to give it to the lady for free. So, okay, mother.
So isn't that beautiful? I mean, when was the last time you made one of your customers cry? In a good way. In a bad way is easy. Like, look at the body language there, the tears wiped away, the laughter, the bear hugs. That is what we're trying to achieve with every marketing communication. When you think about it, we're trying to emotively engage a customer, because if you emotively engage a customer, that is the moment that your brand is banked in their brain and heart as something that's relevant to them, that should belong to their community. And if you look at something like TikTok, look at these images. TikTok is probably one of the happiest spaces in social media. People are emotively engaged when they're on the platform, and that you should immediately connect to probability of success for branding. Because if you can drop a brand message into a space where a customer is already emotionally engaged and is open and is curious and is creative, these are beautiful spaces compared to a consumer maybe who's walking down the high street and isn't in a mood to consume any brand content. Here, if we get the content right, and the content does have to be right, has to be relevant, has to be creative and curious, has to be TikTok, ready inside the platform. But it is a space for emotional happiness and joy and delight. We're already climbing that ladder of engagement. I want to end the speech today talking about peer-to-peer and how important having conversations with our peer network is. Having conversations with your consumer and letting them be that empowered kind of brand warrior for you, if you like. So we're coming into a very kind of, we call it the sharing economy, and Gen Z and millennial generations, and we talk all about the shift from me to we. And it kind of ties us back to our theme today about collaboration a little bit. We are looking at an extremely collaborative consumer. We've already talked about that. And their conversations in amongst themselves, particularly digitally, is how brands are brought to life today. And so you have to be part of that conversation. You have to curate the conversation. You have to be creating memories. And this has evolved, of course, over time. I mean, if you have older social media, let's say YouTube or Insta, all the way through to WeChat and Weibo and on to TikTok, and you have to understand that the consumer is getting more and more demanding. As a peer-to-peer conversation, they now want relevant content to share, but they also have such power in their hands in terms of your brand and business by what they say about it. So this is a very sharing culture. We live in a world where we share all our opinions, all our reviews all the time. It's Alibaba or Amazon, anything before we buy, before we consume, we tend to look to our peer network for advice on that place. And I kind of formed 3 circles I think consumers live in. There's the pink circle there, which is the world, the whole big wide world. The yellow circle is my world, my individual space, the places I go to, who I am. And the our world is that community piece I spoke about earlier on. We all belong to communities, be they digital or be they physical. Now, where do you want to be as a brand? Of course, you want to be in that yellow or green circle. You don't want to be in that irrelevant pink circle. The irrelevant pink circle is just everything outside that's not relevant to me. You need to be in the circular community, in the peer network conversation. And if you look again at the old marketing models, it was very much we were just in the world. The marketing communication was out there in the world, and we hoped that you'd stumble across it as a consumer, or we'd hope we'd cut through all the noise to get to you. That was a fundamentally broken system, because what you want to be today is inside the circles. You want to be in the peer network conversation. You want to be in their world. So on the screen in front of you is some examples of brands via TikTok bringing their brand to life inside the peer-to-peer network through gamification, through sharing. And this is where people enjoy a brand. This is where brands are brought to life today. And if you get this right, if you get the content right, and by the way, it's not easy. You have to be creative about understanding how you bring your brand to life in a platform like this. But get it right, and you are now bringing your brand to life within the peer network for them to share their story amongst their friends. The more sharing, the more empowering you get, the more credible brand following you get, the more customer lifetime value you get. You can see where all this is going. There's a wonderful quote from an English novelist called Terry Pratchett. He says, "Do you not know that a man is not dead while his name is still spoken?" This idea that if people are speaking about you, you're still brought to life. Now ask yourself the question, if no one's speaking about you, does your brand even exist? If no one's talking about you, if no one's sharing their stories about your brand, do you even exist? I would challenge you. Maybe you don't. You're just a transactional brand once again. This is why the art of storytelling has become so critical to brands. We have to make sure that we give our consumers content, creative, memorable, experiential content. They will then share within their peer network, and that's how we bring our brands to life. That's how they bring our brands to life for us. And it's how we excite them around our brands and businesses. So there was lots of values I spoke about there today. I'm going to pop them up on the screen there. Collaboration. It is the key one. Making sure that we have collaborative conversations with our consumers and not marketing communications. We have to build relationships. How do you build a relationship? You have to be emotive. You have to engage emotions around, make them happy, make them laugh, make them curious, make them creative. So we have all those abilities on a platform like TikTok. Make it instant, make it community based, make them feel that they belong to community, give them the experience that they can share within their peer-to-peer networks. If we get all those things right, then we have brought that brand to life. We have made them feel seen, heard, and valued. We are part of their communities. We are creating memories. We are making them laugh. We are giving them experiences. And all that is what is essential in brand conversation today. Hope you've enjoyed that. As I said, I only had 20 minutes with you, so I've stuffed a lot of content in there. Honoured with the invite with my colleagues at TikTok to join you today. I hope you've enjoyed it. And for now, back to you.